future reference, offerings don't go on Buddhist statues. No need to call out whoever did it. Maybe it was this morning, maybe it was now. You don't put stuff on the statues. It goes in front, just so you know. And you wonder why I don't teach rituals of Buddhism. Nobody would be here. It also ruins the statues. I'll join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good to see you all here. Anyone here for the first time? Great. Now you know you don't put fruit on the Buddha statues. To take it out of Buddhist terms. Yeah. You know, it's funny. So, anyone know what the word dana means? Literal translation of the word dana. I mean, you're all kind of close, but generosity. Okay? It's the most misused and misunderstood and manipulated word in the Buddhist tradition, in my opinion, as an unenlightened, ignorant folk sitting here, in case any of you hadn't figured that out yet over the years. All right? So let me tell you what most people do with the word generosity in my years of watching. You'd go to a place like this, somebody like me, meaning not a monk, not a nun, would be sitting here, and they would give you a talk, and they would lead a meditation, and they would open up your hearts, and you'd feel good and all warm and fuzzy and wonderful. And then they would say at the end, always at the end, because if it's at the beginning, you might have time to forget. They would say at the end, now let me introduce you to the Buddhist teachings on dana. Dana is generosity. I'm pretending to be somebody else at this moment, so for the record, in our millions of YouTube followers, this is not me. I'm pretending to be somebody else. Let me introduce you to the word dana. Dana is the Buddhist teachings on generosity. And the Buddha taught that generosity is the greatest form of practice that we can do to overcome suffering. So if you'd like, and you feel like being generous, you can practice dana and put a donation in the box right over there in the corner on your way out. Make sure you don't miss it. Or we'll be passing a hat around, or you can come up here and give us your dana. And then people call it dana, right? So let's just say somebody presents generosity that way. How would that make you feel as you get up and left? Complicated?
Obligated.
Obligated, yes, and complicated. What else?
Resentful.
Resentful. What else?
Stingy.
Stingy, right? Pressured, guilty, conflicted. What do? I just felt good for an hour, and now they told me that I must practice dana. And they even said it, I don't know, Pali, Sanskrit, whatever it is. It's one of those words, right? I think it's Pali, actually, right? Yeah. You know, they even said a Pali word, so that means it must be a real Buddhist thing, right? And then there's so much pressure, and these are my words now, right? I'm done with my little role play there of the person. And then there's so much pressure, manipulation, and guilt into trying to get you to give money, right? Then, so for me, if I'm sitting out there and then I'm walking out and I see the little donation basket, which most people call a dana bowl, which is ridiculous because dana means generosity, right? What did you put in the bowl if you put something in the bowl? Money. So if you call it a dana bowl, that means you put generosity in it. Generosity is not money. These are two completely different things. If you're brand new to Buddhism, you're getting what I consider right now the most important teaching in Buddhism. Again, from my unenlightened, ignorant perspective. So you've just put money in a bowl on the way out, and somebody said to you, thank you for your dana. People ask me all the time, do you accept dana? I'm like, yeah, here's a broom, you can go sweep, right? Dana is generosity. And the Buddha taught generosity was three things. He said, if you feel pleasant before, pleasant during, and pleasant after. This is dana. Now, if I'm out there and I just got that teaching and I'm new to Buddhism and I'm walking towards the door and I'm looking around and I'm wondering like, oh my God, what do I do? Do I put $1 in here? Do I not? Are people looking at me? Are they not? Do I feel pressured? What do I feel like? There's so much just mental manipulation going on there. And I think that's really just nasty and wrong. And that's how most Buddhist places do things. Truly, in the West. They've completely manipulated the word dana, right? The Buddha also taught his monks to not teach about generosity, right, dana, until after someone had given to them. Because you know what monks are? Human, right? With needs and desires and cravings and wants. So if you're sitting in front of a monk and they're like, you know, I'm really hungry. It would be a great practice of generosity if you took me to lunch right now. Pretty good odds you're taking that monk to lunch, right? Otherwise you're going to walk away feeling like a terrible person, right? So he said to his monks, you do not teach generosity until after people had already given. So you're not pressuring them or manipulating them into supporting you, right? Very important practice. There was a Sri Lankan master years ago and he gave a great teaching on generosity. And he said that he gave the example of having a child, right? And let's say you're taking a child or a niece or nephew or a grandkid, whoever it is, and they're 5 years old, and you want to buy them a bike for birthday. And so while you're out looking for this bike, you feel good, right? You can't wait to buy the perfect bike for this kid. And then you're giving the bike to the kid, and you feel good during. And then you watch the kid get on the bike and ride away and probably fall a few times. And you feel good, not at the falling, but at the fact that the kid is now playing on the bike. So you felt pleasant before, pleasant during, and pleasant after. This is what generosity is. Generosity takes all forms. Of course, in America, in the Buddhist world, we've twisted it to make it seem like it's only money, which is why they call it a dana bowl, right? Generosity, you give people, what else can you give? Time. What else? Attention. Compassion. Right? Give people a smile. Give people a hug. Right? There's so many things that you can give. You can give people silence. There's so many things to give. But in the Buddhist world with generosity, most people don't talk about it that way. At the end of Dharma talks, which are teachings of the Buddha, most people aren't sitting up there saying, now let me teach you about generosity. I hope you all go out there today, truly, and give a smile or a hug or attention to somebody, right? And the Buddha also said, and I could go on for 6 hours on this, and that would be a short talk, so I won't, since you all came here to meditate anyways. That's not fair to say, but you get my point, hopefully. The other thing the Buddha said is the greatest form of generosity is what? Other than Travis. To give the Dharma. To give, and it doesn't necessarily mean like you have to sit up here and give like a Dharma talk, right? It doesn't mean give a teaching. It means to practice, right? The greatest form of generosity is to give the Dharma. The Dharma is the teachings of the Buddha, right? Loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, patience, morality, all these words that you always hear around Buddhism, that is the greatest gift, right? So please understand that as you go on your journey. And watch today how many opportunities you have to give to someone. Yeah, the intention is most important. What's in your heart and what's in your mind. And a last example, in case you're not sure in your own life how these things work out. Anyone give stuff to like Goodwill? Right? Anyone feel good when you give to Goodwill? I'm in this boat too, don't worry. I'm including myself in all of these questions. How many of you went shopping in the morning for a bunch of new stuff and then went to Goodwill and gave away all your new stuff? Doesn't work that way. But boy, we sure feel good when we give away our stuff, right? Keep that in mind. We're giving stuff we don't even want. We don't even want it, you know? And the hard part here, I promise you, I think this is the most important thing in Buddhist teachings. And the reason is that the Buddha said the cause of suffering is the three poisons, as most of you know: greed, anger, ignorance. The first one being greed. And he said the way you overcome greed is with generosity. So by definition, by the Buddhist teachings, the number one most important teaching, and this is how I've always viewed it, is generosity. How many of you over the years have heard talks on generosity at Buddhist places? A little bit. You know, it doesn't get discussed that much because they roll it into money. Right? But it's the most important practice. So see in your lives when you go out there today where you can practice giving to people. It's a phenomenal practice. And I know the intention is always good, right? So I'll just throw this out there at the risk of offending people, which, you know, I do every day of my life. But understand that most often when we give things, right, it's stuff we don't want. Very often, right? Watch that as you go through your day. Hey, I'm getting rid of this because I just bought a new one. You want it? You know how many times I've said to people when they call or ask or walk in and they're like, hey, I've got this old whatever. Do you want it? And I'll say, no, but we'd love the new one. You know? And again, this is tricky because the intention is, and I guarantee it's people in this room have done this, right? I guarantee it. I know it for a fact as I look around the room. So I realize that there might be some arrows here that are hurting a little bit. But that's to me what practice is about, is looking at where are we hurt, right? Because that means we're being honest, you know? Hey, Jeff, I just bought a really rad new printer. It's incredible. I've got this old one laying around. It's crap. It doesn't work anymore. You have to get new cartridges, but would the temple like it? You know? Constantly that happens. You know, and I'm challenged in that moment of, okay, do I turn this into some teaching? Do I just graciously say, thank you so much, but we're okay? You know, or do I just take the printer and then give it away, you know, a day later? Lots of options we go through. Really explore this stuff, you know? For me, I love talking about this. It's probably the most passionate teaching that there is. And really the most critical, as I've already said. So, with that, I will be generous. I will stop talking. We will sit. We will do a meditation. And you can ponder generosity and greed in your head for the next 20 minutes if you're going to ponder something. You know? All right, meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. You won't figure anything out whatsoever. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. Meaning, don't ask yourself, is it working? Is it not working? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with sounds. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of the sounds. All right. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on the cushions, often helps. Slide into the front third, pushing stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the benches or chairs, also sitting up straight. I'll guide us as we begin. Settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, don't expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply going to continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Lost in thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind beginning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands and cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than anyone in this room who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us in this room, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in or where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. And we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get every single day. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way we respond to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how we respond to everything else that's happening throughout our days. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. It's not necessarily a fun practice, but it's free. Meditation in Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. and how your actions, meaning what you think, what you say, and what you do, how that impacts you and the world around you. And that's the practice. It's really simple. It's holding up a mirror and looking back at yourself. What do I think? What do I say? What do I do? And what is the intention behind it? And how does it impact myself and those around me? And often we come into Buddhism to learn about something outside of us. And ultimately, it's really just opening up completely to your own self. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it is a practice. It's difficult to look at what you do and why you do it. And all of you brave souls who are here right now have taken on that challenge. It's not always fun. If you've spent most of your life, like myself, as a greedy, angry, ignorant person, to look at that is not pleasant. You know? There are many approaches to Buddhist practice. And that's one of the beauties of this. You know, there's basically the core teachings of the Buddha, and then there's different cultures and ways to explore them and look at them. And for me, always being a very intense human being, I've rolled that into Buddhist practice for the last 20 years. And I take very seriously the Dogen teaching where he said, practice as if your hair is on fire. And again, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Some of you do, right? And so that teaching of practice, the Buddhist teachings as if your hair is on fire means if your hair is on fire, and I just talked about this the other day, but you work pretty hard to put it out, right? You wouldn't just sit there and say, wow, my hair's on fire, this is fun. No, it's painful, it hurts, right? And life is painful. Life hurts. That's the first thing the Buddha said. Life is filled with dukkha, life is filled with suffering, life is filled with pain and hurt. That's true. There is no escaping that. And so to me, when I first begin to kind of explore what that means, it's like, okay, well, if life is filled with lots of suffering, and yes, there's joy and happiness and so much to be grateful for and wonderful things in the world, but let's be honest, none of us are here because we spend all our days thinking about that stuff, right? We're here because of the suffering, and we don't want to suffer. And the Buddha said that's a great craving and desire, to not want to suffer, or a healthy craving, a healthy desire to not want to suffer. So then to me, it makes perfect, clear sense of like, okay, if I am suffering, I have to look at why. Greed, anger, ignorance. That's what he said. And that's why, again, coming back to the generosity teaching, that's why to me the generosity thing is so important. Because if the first thing, as I alluded to earlier, is the greed, then we have to look at, okay, where am I greedy? How am I greedy? Where am I angry? How am I angry? Where am I ignorant? And how am I ignorant? Looking at these three things is not fun. You know, it doesn't feel good. Right? Anyone here been angry for a long time in their life? You know, is it fun to just be like, wow, I'm a really angry person. This is fun. No, it sucks. It's not pleasant. But that's the brave practice. To look at that. To be very open and honest with where is my anger and why is it there? To be fearless with those explorations, to be honest with those explorations. And so many people begin often, and this is more for the newer people, often begin meditation and Buddhist practice because we want to feel good. We think our life is a mess, and so if we meditate, we'll feel better. Well, you might, but it's just like Advil. You know, you have a headache, take 2 Advil, maybe 3, maybe 4. You hope the headache goes away. 5 hours later, the headache's back. What do? You pop more Advil. Next thing you know, 30 years go by and you're still popping Advil to get rid of the headaches. As opposed to looking at, why is the headache occurring? And that's the root of this practice as I understand it. Why is the suffering occurring? And when we truly and honestly open up and look at that suffering, it's not pleasant. And that's why community is important. You know, if you're sitting at home by yourself, staring at a wall, trying to figure out how you suffer and why you suffer, that's not fun, right? It's that expression, misery loves company, right? Misery doesn't love being alone. So if you're going to explore your suffering, explore it with others. That's the Sangha. That's the triple gem. That's what the Buddha said. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The awakening that is within all of us, the Dharma, the teachings, and the Sangha, the community of people that help you explore that. And it's a beautiful practice if you be patient with yourself and look through it. And when you explore, you know, your greed and your anger and your ignorance, to then not hate yourself for being greedy, angry, and ignorant. That's kind of the important step there, is to not fall into this judgment of, well, I'm such a greedy, angry, ignorant person, this sucks. Because then you just continue to repeat the same things. And that's not pleasant at all. So, fun teachings, challenging teachings, but I think very much creating an opportunity to be honest with what we do and why we do it. So with that, I'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that is on your mind, and I'll use the rest of the time to kind of go from there. Yeah.
A lot of guided meditations I've done through apps often say to breathe in through the first three and the ending three long deep breaths, to inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Mm. And you didn't specify that. I'm just curious to know, is there a difference? Is there a purpose? Is there a reason? Perhaps.
Yeah, I think if you didn't hear, the question was, a lot of apps, a lot of things he's listened to with guided meditations suggest breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. My suggestion, just breathe. Most important, right? If you listen to 1,000 people lead you in meditation, they're going to lead you 1,000 different ways. If any of them tell you that that's the way, the only way, and the right way, and then they ask you for money, you should probably listen to somebody else, right? So most important, I think, and this is just one of many answers, is developing what's comfortable for you. Often, especially for people who might be newer to meditation or developing a daily habit and using, you know, the apps and things like that, is then we might spend so much time thinking like, wait, am I breathing in through my left nostril or my right nostril? Am I breathing in through my right ear or my left ear? You know, we spend so much time often focused on those little things, which to me seems very forced, very controlled, very structured. And forced, controlled, and structured, to me, are the exact opposite of what meditation is really about. I'm not saying that breathing that way is wrong, but make sure it's comfortable for you. And if it's not, then, you know, abandon it. The Buddha's teaching very clearly when he said, when breathing in and taking a short breath, know you're taking a short breath. If you're breathing out and taking a long breath, know you're taking a long breath. Anapanasati Sutta, he talked about the breathing. And that was just an awareness of breath. Now, of course, over, you know, thousands of years, different traditions, you know, Buddhist, Hindu, you know, yogi practices will all have different things. I remember going to one years ago and I did some weird finger thing, like, you know, you close your nostril here and you push on it here and then you shift. And I was like so worried about like, am I using my fingers properly to close my nostril? That I felt like I was missing the whole point. Like if I wanted to worry about all that stuff, I never would have gone to meditation to begin with. I would have just spent my whole life worrying about that stuff. So I know I'm kind of expanding beyond your simple question, but I'm really speaking to not just how am I doing my meditation, but how am I living my life? Observe it and be aware of it, as opposed to the critique and like judgment of trying to be the perfect being, you know? So is that helpful at least? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Kind of along lines where you just landed was, can you talk about self-compassion and some of the obstacles to it? I mean,
Sure. The obstacles to self-compassion, we don't have enough time for that, right? There's plenty of them. Let me first back up and say, and I said this earlier and I almost went in this direction and I stopped myself, but when I talk about getting to know the self, that's most important. I get it in Buddhist teachings, right? It talks about that there is no self. It's one of the fundamental core Buddhist teachings, non-self, to abide in a place of non-self. Well, to me, what that means is whatever I label myself, call myself, judge myself as, that's not who I am. Those are just labels, those are judgments, those are critiques, those are, pats on the back. Those are just kind of passing ideas. That true self is really beyond any sort of label or judgment or critique. That our entire being is just an accumulation of karma, consciousness, cause and effect. And it comes together as Jeff, a person sitting here right now talking to Amy, right, with Ruby. And we think those things are like real, right? These are all just stories we've made up. Somebody gave me the name, somebody gave you that name, somebody gave Ruby her name, probably you, maybe, I don't know. But so first we have to understand that self isn't real. And when I say that, if you're new to Buddhism, it doesn't mean you don't exist. If you have an arm and you go to a Buddhist class and someone says you're not real and you walk out of here and you chop off your arm, that's going to hurt. So my disclaimer, don't try that at home, right? That will hurt. No self just means you are completely different from how you perceive yourself to be. If you line up 10 people and they all describe you, do you think they would describe you the same way? No. Strangers, loved ones, even you would all give different descriptions of Amy, right? So to look at then what is self-compassion, first it has to understand, well, what is the self? The self is an illusion. And if we can understand that the self is an illusion, then to have compassion for that illusion is a heck of a lot easier. Often because the stories we tell ourselves are often not pleasant, right? If we sit around all day long and we tell ourselves that we're wonderful, kind, compassionate, loving, caring beings, and we love everything and everyone, and we're kind and gentle to everyone, then that's a really easy story to have compassion for. But is that the story we tell ourselves? No. I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough, I'm too much of this, I'm too much of that, I should have done this to them, I shouldn't have done that to them, I should have been here, I should have been there, why did this happen in my whole life? We create so many stories that hurt us just from the story itself. Then we think that story itself is ourselves. And that story is the compassion that we're trying to have for, you get it, right? We're trying to have compassion for that story. That story is not us. So I understand a very common phrase, self-compassion, self-compassion. If the self is a complete illusion, it's a lot easier to have compassion. One step would be try telling yourself wonderful stories about you. If you told yourself all day long the story about how well you take care of Ruby, you wouldn't need to have compassion for that person because that person is compassion. The person that is the story that all the other stuff is tied to, that's the person you're trying to have compassion for. So who is Amy really?
Thanks.
I talked a lot today. Good thing we have church bells. We didn't even pay extra for those. They came free with the building. Not even our building. Yeah. Sit with that for a while. And then the challenge with that kind of practice and that teaching on non-self and self-compassion is, right, this won't make it easy for you. I should have stopped there. But now Amy, who's the story that Amy's been telling herself her whole life, is going to take that mind, that, educated, bright, talented mind, and is going to try to analyze and figure out what I just said about non-self and compassion and self-compassion. And that's where the struggle is going to be. I'll do one last question before we wrap up. Yeah.
Did the hummingbird escape?
Yes. Yes. Well, I don't know. The hummingbird moved. The question was, did the hummingbird escape? So last week, there was a hummingbird, which hummingbirds are really auspicious. If you've never bought papyrus cards, anyone here bought papyrus cards, right? You ever read the hummingbird piece on the back? It's beautiful. Hummingbirds are really beautiful beings and very auspicious. The hummingbird came into Buddha for You downstairs. And so Maggie and I sat there for a while, and Tom was out there trying to figure out, how to get the hummingbird out. And the question is, did the hummingbird escape? We, of course, wanted the hummingbird out. Maybe the hummingbird wanted to be there. Maybe the hummingbird escaped from outside to come to Buddha for You. I mean, you're all here right now. What did you just escape from to come here? Maybe the hummingbird was doing the same thing, right? And there we were like ignorant fools. Well, me, I can't ever say that about Maggie, right? But there I was like an ignorant fool trying to get the hummingbird out. And the hummingbird's thinking like, I don't want to go out. I just escaped from out there. This is where I want to be. But yes, the hummingbird made the hummingbird's way back outside. Yes, despite our tremendous effort to keep the hummingbird inside safely. Anyone else asked that question, I would have just said yes. So, yeah. I'm going to close on a fun day. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions, including the hummingbird. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most.